We welcome you back into the Junk Be Gone studios this morning. I'm Josh Ward alongside a couple of former Tennessee defensive linemen, VFL's former teammates, Marlon Wallace and Daniel Hood. Guys, good to see you this morning.
That's it.
So, Kent State kind of in the rearview mirror at this point, which you're probably fine with at this point.
Yeah.
On to Oklahoma, the SEC opener, all the anticipation of this game with Oklahoma coming into the SEC. So Oklahoma is a preseason top 20 team a few weeks ago, just like Tennessee. So far, Oklahoma has played 3 non-conference teams that they've been able to beat, but it's kind of been shaky. They haven't looked great to this point. So far, wins against Temple, really bad team, 51-3. Houston last week, 16-12. And then yesterday, a pretty good Tulane team from the group of 5 level. Oklahoma won 34-19. Now, going into the season, there are questions about Oklahoma's offensive line. There may be even more questions about Oklahoma's offensive line. It was kind of a new-look group. They brought some guys back, but had to bring in some transfers to fill some spots, now dealing with injury up front. Jackson Arnold's the 5-star quarterback who has a ton of talent, athletic, but again, shaky. I don't think has looked as good as Nico to start the season. So I'll ask you this. Is the Oklahoma team that Tennessee will face next week, is it what you expected? What about this game? Does it look easier than maybe you would have predicted 4 weeks ago heading into the season? How do you compare thoughts in the preseason to what you see with Tennessee, Oklahoma now?
I kick it off. I would say Oklahoma's right about where I expected them to be. When you bring in a new quarterback, just like we just brought in Nico, this is his first year officially starting. Venables is a defensive-minded coach. I felt like just looking at the different scores, Temple, not a very good team. You had Houston, decent team, but not on Oklahoma's level. That was a tighter ball game. But I looked at the Tulane game. It's probably their best opponent they've played all season. I watched Tulane a week ago. Explosive. They've got a reputation. They've got expectations as their team. Mm-hmm. And I felt like Oklahoma did a great job yesterday as I watched the game, just kind of imposing their will on them. I think with the quarterback-wise, I think he's going to get better. That's just a part of being young. I think he's going to get better week to week. And then having this game in Oklahoma, night game, this, on the road at that time, Nico's first real road game. I think it's going to be a show-all kind of deal. We'll be able to see how serious this team is, but I think they're right where I expected Oklahoma to be.
So maybe be careful about comparing Nico and Jackson Arnold, what they've done so far, as they both go into the first SEC game.
Right.
Yeah, and I'll be honest, I don't think Oklahoma looks as strong as what I thought they were going to be. I thought about Texas. I thought about Oklahoma. Oh, these are great schools coming in. Then you start looking at it, and you look at the games, like their offense is struggling. The offensive line plays, like you said. The defense has done a really good job against the run, but they haven't really played anybody that's done that much on the run. Jackson Arnold, to me, reminds me of a Jarrett Garantano at Tennessee. It's like all this hype coming in, but it's not really translated into yards per attempt or other big pass plays. Now, they have got the job done. They have been winning football games, but Tennessee seems like their stock is skyrocketing, and I'm bearish on Oklahoma's stock right now. I don't see that just yet.
Got you. I would disagree with you just because as far as the JG thing goes, this happens a lot in case you guys don't know. But the JG thing though, like we had 4 years of that. This is this guy's first season, and I would say 97 rush yards. That's a big deal for us. And as a defensive lineman, a running quarterback can kind of extend plays, get you a first down here, get you out of a bad situation. I think they're better because he's a freshman, and I could be wrong, but as freshmen go, you get better and better and better and better the more you see.
But what we're saying is I think he's a very solid, good average quarterback, but we're comparing him to Nico right now. The guy who's now outscored opponents almost 200 points to 3, I think, in his 8 quarters of play. Not even 8 quarters of play. Well, 4, 6, 10, 12 quarters of play. And it's like when you compare those two, it's like it's obvious which one's elite talent,
right,
and which one has a chance to be a very solid, productive QB, but not elite.
I will say that compared to August, I thought going into this season, Tennessee's defensive line, we believe, hey, this is going to be a strength for Tennessee up front, what they're able to do, and I think they've been that good, maybe better. I think the concerns about the offensive line for Oklahoma have been there, maybe a little bit worse. So my confidence in Tennessee is higher than probably 4 weeks ago. The pause I would have is we have seen this season, and I think every year in college football, week to week. Week 1, South Carolina struggles with Old Dominion, then goes and whips Kentucky. And then Kentucky, after struggling against South Carolina, goes out and takes it
Almost
to
beat
Georgia
Georgia.
to where it's a 1-point game until the game finishes. So week to week, we don't know, and we'll get into the road stuff a little bit later, but week to week in college football in general,
It's a little different.
we don't know. But I say all that, still more confident in Tennessee's chances now than if
Absolutely.
we had this conversation a month ago.
Absolutely. And Oklahoma looks like a very talented roster, and you know the roster is much better than we would. But like man to man, top to bottom, I would say that they're pretty equal. But it just seems like what Josh Heupel's doing, and you saw him talk about this if you watched the TV game yesterday. He's like, man, we got a nameless, faceless opponent, and we require our guys to show up every day and compete. And Tennessee's team looks like they've completely bought into that identity. And it seems like a very special thing right now. And this will be the weekend to find out.
Marlon, any final thought, the week-to-week
I
aspect?
would just say that, yes, I think Tennessee is talented enough. They're showing enough to go win the ball game. But I also know that, like you just said, week to week, it's a little different. Like that Georgia game was a big deal yesterday at Kentucky, at night game.
Yeah.
And it makes Georgia look like they're not the number one team in the nation. And Kentucky, if they don't slip up a couple times, has a more relevant chance to be winning that ball game. That's the reason why I say I'm with you on that one. I pause because this is his first real road test at night, Oklahoma. You're gonna be up for this game. You're playing against Tennessee. Tennessee's rated high. You're starting a little slower in the season. They're gonna be up for this game.
That's the tease, I think, right there. Norman, at night. That's where Tennessee will be next week. When we come back, what about Josh Heupel's teams on the road? What about the noise that will be there in Norman, Oklahoma? A look at that when we come back.